Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Creemee Cast Friday at 4 on VDC TV. I am here today with a special, fill-in, not necessarily special guest. He's filling in for Guy Page. I have Caleb Morvan here with me. Typically, he's our producer. Welcome, Caleb.
How's it going, everybody? How's it going, Paul?
Pretty good, dude. Thank you very much for filling in today. I didn't really ask you on short notice or anything, but we kind of knew Guy's out of town. He's taking his son in up in Wells Beach, Maine, and enjoying himself. So we're happy that we're able to cover for him and let him enjoy himself. Because man, does he work hard. So I'm glad to know that he's enjoying himself and just relaxing. As we've seen a photo of him chilling on the beach. So we're happy he's having a good time. But we definitely have. Not a crazy amount to talk about today, although there's a whole lot going on in Vermont, and ultimately the country as a whole. We had, of course, the floods last week, and then you had the assassination attempt, or so-called assassination attempt. I think it was. Some people don't. We're curious to hear what you guys have to say, because I know our readers are somewhat skeptical and like to question things. So we'd love to hear what you have to say about the Trump assassination attempt, and then, of course, the RNC last night and what happened there, and some of the guests that were there, and I thought it was pretty interesting. Some of the people that he had on the stage. We saw Hulk Hogan, Kid Rock, and we saw Dana White, and of course Donald Trump, and he gave kind of an overview of what happened on I think it was Saturday. The infamous day, the infamous photo, the really legendary photo. I don't care, staged or not. And I'm not one of these people that thinks it is, but there's a lot of people that think it was. So I think it was pretty awesome what happened. Although, I mean, it's not awesome that somebody tried to kill him, but what came out of it was pretty incredible. What do you think, Caleb?
I mean, like you're saying, that picture's iconic. That'll go down in history forever. Just Trump standing there, American flag in the background, just got his ear shot, like... I mean, how more patriotic does it get? Well,
that's just it. That's the thing. Like, I say, no matter what happened, do you have an ounce of patriot in your blood? I don't care who you are. That was legendary, and I think people across the political spectrum realize this. Like, that was unreal stuff. But before we get to that, let's cover a little bit of the flood updates. There's a little bit coming out of the Scott administration this week. One of the things that he is promoting as a potential solution for some of the people that lost their cars, let's see, I think he's calling it it's an EV incentive. So Governor Phil Scott and the Agency of Transportation today announced that it will again modify its vehicle incentive programs for Vermonters whose personal vehicles were damaged by flooding in an effort to increase financial support to households affected by last week's flooding and to expedite the transition to plug-in vehicles. This means the government is going to use funds to help purchase Vermonters' gas vehicles and offer them discounts on electric vehicles, despite some red flags that the electric car industry is hitting roadblocks. The governor states, "Me and my team are doing everything we can to give immediate relief to Vermonters as we continue to assess and respond to the needs," he said. "This program will help those whose vehicles were flooded upgrade to a new vehicle that's better for the environment." So that's what Governor Scott is working on and trying to make happen for people that lost their cars in the flood. And, I can't necessarily say that I disagree with that. I think it's really unfortunate that a lot of people did lose their vehicles in yet another flood, devastating flood, the third one in a single year. However, I'm not so sure that electric vehicles are maybe the solution to the needs. I think if you're somebody that lost your, diesel truck or your gas-powered vehicle, maybe there should be incentives for that. Maybe there should be an incentive to replace those vehicles. However, he's saying, this is better for the environment. So some more details on what's being offered. What's being offered include the Replace Your Ride. In the Replace Your Ride program allows up to $5,000 for those who swap their gas or diesel-powered cars for cleaner transportation options. If the vehicle is being replaced specifically for flood damage, there will be further special offers. So there's already a program called Replace Your Ride, which will allow, again, for $5,000 to anyone who is trying to replace their car. So, I mean, look, if you're trying to make a down payment on a new vehicle, you want to get something new, the state will give you $5,000 to do that. That, of course, is funded by you.
And me.
and you. And everybody. It's funded by all of us. I think there's probably widespread support for this in the country, or in the state, more so. Maybe not from our viewership, but that is the case. So that's one of the things that they're doing to mitigate some of the, not mitigate climate change, but, they would say mitigate climate change, but in response to the flood, this is something that they're doing. And another thing that was kind of an interesting news story. So if Governor Scott was in Cabot on July 9th, essentially he was there to commemorate the floods and not this year, of last year's floods, and really kind of rally the troops for just basically say great job on recovery, Cabot. Good for everyone. However, as that was going on, thunder was rumbling in the distance and rain was falling, and it was appearing like it might flood again. So that's exactly what happened. It did flood again in Cabot, and that's it's really too bad, because it's frustrating, I think, for a lot of Vermonters, based off everything that we've been through in the last year with the floods, and then to have another one. It takes years to come back from a flood. I mean, in some places they're still coming back from Irene, and that's what 13 years ago, and now we're talking about 2 more floods. One of them, or 3 more floods. 2 of them substantially bad, and it's just unfortunate. It's a really unfortunate situation here in Vermont that we're dealing with. So I don't know, Caleb. What do you make of all of this?
I mean, it's crazy. Like, the first one that happened, it's like, oh, no big deal. It's a 100-year flood, and then we get another, and then we get another. So I don't know. I think it's a little odd.
Yeah.
You could say. But kind of back to the Governor Scott thing. I love the idea that he wants to help people out, help them get back to their cars so they can get to their jobs, to make their money, to help the state, be a state. But my thought is why isn't there a better way to spend that money where we can, maybe prevent these floods from happening again? Yeah, we got a lot of rain, but I don't think that amount of rain that we got, should take out towns and cities and, whole parts of the state.
Like, multiple times a year.
So,
yeah.
So what has changed in the state in the last 100 years that's causing this? So how can we take that money and put it, into dredging the rivers, putting in bigger culverts, redirecting whatever it takes? That would be my thought, is that, instead of handing out money, to people, if they're driving an electric vehicle, they're probably hardworking people, you get what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
I think there's a better use for the money, is my personal opinion.
I think there's a better use for the money too. However, I think this is one of these gimme things that he has to do to appease a certain crowd.
Absolutely. I mean,
they're saying the only solution to climate change is renewable energy, electric vehicles, and what else? I mean, that's it. Right? That's what's apparently going to stop the floods. And we've talked a lot about this in the past since the floods. This past week or so, I asked Governor Scott in a press conference last week, about geoengineering. Is this what's causing climate change? Is this what's going on? And I will say, I think I was a little bit harsh on his response in the first place. He said, well, first of all, climate change is real. And I actually don't disagree with him on that. I do think climate change is real. Something is happening to change the weather.
I mean, everything goes in cycles. I mean, the dinosaurs went extinct. I mean, are we slowly starting to go extinct in the next 200-300 years?
Yeah, well, that's the question. And I think there's always changes that happen in our environment.
We're not saying climate change isn't real, because things change. Things go in cycles. That's the way the world works. But why is it moving so fast, so rapidly?
Substantially?
Yeah.
And why is it that the only solution to it is more renewable energy? It seems like that just doesn't add up to me, right? Once again, we talked about this a lot. If you're buying solar panels, right, and we're installing solar fields, by the way, which is not great for the environment. Let's talk about biodiversity and land conservation and et cetera, et cetera. These solar panels are from China, a lot of them. They're not made in the United States. And when they're making them, they're using coal power. They're using not clean energy. Let's just put it that way, to make these things, right? So, well, we can pat ourselves on the back and say, oh, look how great we are for what we're doing in Vermont. We're solving climate change. We are doing our part. Well, we're really not. It's a complete lie, because that's just the reality. These panels and these technologies that we're using still have negative externalities, and we need to address them. We can't just pretend like they don't exist because we're in Vermont and everything's so great and green.
Right.
Because it's just not the reality.
And, Vermont's a start. That's a great thing for us to be the green state or whatever.
Sure.
But is Vermont going to make a difference in the country, New England, the world?
No. Well, it could. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to sit here and say.
Honestly, I don't really know. That's more of a question for you.
Well, I'm not somebody who sits here and says I don't think entirely that carbon, or really any industry for that matter, doesn't have an effect on our environment. They all do. Absolutely. Right? So even the green energy thing, right? So the state of Vermont has passed a bill to conserve 30% of the land of the state by 2030 and 50% of the land by 2050. And one of the questions that I had, so they had a hearing about this on, I think it was Monday. One of the questions I had for them, are these solar fields going to be considered conserved land? Are the wind power plants, are they going to be considered conserved land? And they told me no. Right? So when you take a look at the numbers, right, and everything's about biodiversity, that's why they want to conserve the land. It's for, the plants, the animals, the birds, the bees, everything, right? Biodiversity, that's what that means. It's like the overall amount of ecological
the ecosystem.
The ecosystem, exactly, right? Thank you. Yeah. That's what biodiversity means, right? So they say no, solar panels don't count. That's what I was told by Amy Sheldon, who's the chair of the committee. It's Energy and Environment, House Energy and Environment. She said no, they don't count. And I said, okay. So when you just look at like the raw numbers, you're talking 75% of the land of this state is owned by private landowners, right? So there's about 6 million acres of land in the state. And so 75% of that is owned by private landowners. About 1.3 million acres is considered farmland and agricultural land. And the big argument there is that the land is not considered, agricultural land is not considered conserved land because it's not good for biodiversity. So what we're looking at is a very simple math problem. We don't have enough land to conserve 50% of the land without, of course, incentivizing people to sell their land or really forcing them to with high property taxes, which is what I kind of think is going on. I don't think that the legislature maybe realizes that's exactly what they're doing. Some of them 100% do. I'm just going to put that out there. 100% they know what they're doing, but I would say the vast majority of them don't realize how these two things connect. I made the connection when I went to the meeting, and a bunch of the legislators I was speaking to did not make that connection. So I'm not going to pin it all on them, but it just comes back to the environmental thing. It's like, so we're conserving all this land. We can only produce so much energy with solar energy and wind turbines and supposedly renewables. And how is this going to stop climate change? Electric vehicles aren't going to stop climate change. It's just not the reality. That's if we all agree that climate change is being caused by carbon emissions, which I don't believe it is. I believe it's being caused by geoengineering. That's just me. So I want to move on. That's it. Unless you have anything else that you want to add to that, Caleb.
No.
So, of course, that's a good topic, interesting thing that's happening in Vermont. But let's move on to, and we're going to come back to make a connection actually to Vermont here in a minute. But so the Trump talked about last night in the RNC. First of all, here's a photo of Hulk Hogan, the RNC last night, which some people online are saying, oh, this was super cringe or it was super corny or whatever. I mean, it was kind of corny, but I thought it was hilarious.
It was great.
It was pretty awesome. Yeah, he's like, Trumpomania will rule, brother. Trumpomania. It's just funny. Make America great again. I mean, come on. That was beautiful. Who can't get behind that? I'm sorry. Who can't get behind that? That was funny. So you had Hulk Hogan, he gave a speech, and of course Kid Rock was there, he was playing music, and then you had Dana White of the UFC, president of the UFC, and he gave a speech, and he talked a little bit about his journey to coming to the RNC. Trump asked him to come, but he was actually on vacation, or was going to be on vacation, and his wife actually convinced him to say, you know what? You can't say no to Trump. You gotta go be there at the RNC. So he left his vacation, went to the RNC, spoke, introduced Donald Trump, and then Trump came out and he spoke. And he talked about a lot of things. He talked a lot about, well, first and foremost, he talked about the assassination attempt. And he explained basically what had happened. And, to hear his rendition of it, let's just put it this way. I know there's a lot of people out there who are saying, oh, it was rigged. It was, the whole thing, not rigged, but it was faked. It was staged, the whole thing. Watching Trump on the stage, and from what I've seen from him, his family, his whole demeanor has changed. And I'm not saying he's a changed man necessarily, but he seems like he's reflected a little bit on his life and himself.
And maybe his last term. Yeah,
maybe his last term a little bit, and how maybe he's seen as this kind of like divisive character. And he did talk a lot about unity, reuniting the country, and basically just. But first, I don't want to move on there from yet. He talked about what happened, the shooting, and how he was showing a graph, and it was an illegal immigration graph, which, by the way, I meant to pull it up to show you guys today. I don't have it, but if you do get a chance, go look at this graph. The graph that he was showing when he was getting shot at and he turned his head like this, the graph shows the numbers for illegal immigration, and you can see in the early 2000s, and even while Obama was president, how low the numbers were. And they weren't great all those years, and then when he was president, they were the lowest that they've ever been. And then when he left the presidency, the numbers are so high. To see that on a graph like it was actually kind of shocking. I didn't realize. I mean, I've heard the numbers of people getting into the country illegally. It is way worse than I realized.
Right, but to put it in a visual where you actually see the different growth or loss, or
it was nuts. I'll share it somewhere. I'll put it on the Chronicle maybe later this week, and I'll put it on my social media, of course, too. But the numbers are they're unbelievable. I mean, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But anyway, so he talked about it, and he was emotional, man. He was emotional, and he was emotional when we went over to. They had Corey Compantori. I'm sorry if I'm saying his name wrong, but he was the firefighter that was shot, and he had his jacket there, had his helmet there, and they commemorated him. Moment of silence, and I think it was genuine, man. Like, it was really something to see. And so Trump, he did that, and then he kind of just like went into his typical Donald Trump stump speech, where he started just rambling and talking about numbers and talking about Russia and China and, just doing his thing. It was pretty classic him. Did you see any of it, Caleb?
I haven't.
You haven't seen any of it. Well, he was talking a lot about the legal immigration, of course, and inflation and getting inflation down. But one of the things that really stuck out to me, and this connects back to the Governor Scott electrical vehicle incentive. He said, and I tweeted this, he said, I will end the electric vehicle mandate on day one. So there's an electric vehicle mandate for the auto industry where all autos must be EVs by, I believe, the year 2030. And I could be wrong about that. If anyone wants to correct me in the chat, let me know. But he did say, I'm going to end that mandate. And I was like, great. I think that's genius, So I tweeted, electric vehicles are trash and a scam, which I was being a little bit dramatic, maybe. But I had some people that replied to me saying, well, wait a minute, Paul, you're not exactly right about that. And I appreciate it. I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong or maybe a little bit off. So some people that I trust, they write, Vermonster, where he writes, hybrid vehicles are what they should have stayed with. And I actually do agree with that. I think hybrid vehicles really, talk about energy efficiency, right? Like that's burning low amounts of gas, using electric power to a certain degree, but not completely dependent on one or the other. I think that's really smart. And then Bradford Broyles writes, dude, take a spin in a Tesla, no trash and no scam, LOL. And I'll admit, I have been in one Tesla, but I wasn't driving. So,
yeah.
Have you been in one?
I have.
What'd you think?
I mean, they're awesome cars. They're fast, they're clean, they're good looking. I mean, they're like the Mercedes of electric vehicles.
Well, exactly.
They're a high-end, beautiful car. I mean, but do I want to take my Tesla on vacation and have to spend half my time on the road charging, where I could spend 2 minutes filling it up with gas?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, it's and that's the other thing. I think it's interesting. Elon Musk is, I believe, giving Donald Trump something crazy amount of money, like $45 million, a a month or something right now. I don't know the exact number there either. However, he's donating to the president, and he's also supporting him and endorsed him. And for Trump to get up there and say that, I think it's like, whoa, this seems like a bit of a conflict here. But excuse me, I don't know exactly what's going on there. I do know they have a relationship and they're working together. So there's something there that's interesting. And then I had a couple more replies. Dr. Bazal Studies writes, I love it, but after 3 days of pandering to blacks, dozens of people that speak English, porn stars, never Trumpers, miss the opportunities. To be honest, I'm undecided. Watch his speech in 2016 compared to this one, and the difference is not subtle. So there's some people that really weren't happy with Donald Trump's speech. They think that he wasn't hardcore enough, which, I will say there was a different air about Donald Trump in 2016. He was absolutely the anti-establishment candidate. I still think that he is to some degree, but I will, from what I know about politics and what I've been around, what I've seen, everybody sells out. Everybody sells out to some degree. I don't care who you are. Some people are in it to sell out. They want to sell out. Some people don't have to, but at a certain point, especially if you're president, you're at that high level of power, and you have a lot of responsibility. You get pressured in certain ways. So I get it. I understand it. I know that the gripers out there of the world, so the people like Nick Fuentes, the America First people, they weren't happy with Donald Trump's speech. But hey, that is what it is. I think it was. I'll say this. I watched the whole thing, and I wasn't that impressed by it. The reason why I watched it is I just wanted to hear what he had to say about the assassination attempt, because I knew he was going to talk about it. But he kind of just went on and on and on, and he's just rambling and just what are you talking about?
The typical Trump speech.
It was a typical Trump speech. It was kind of awesome too.
My handicap in golf is.
That didn't come up. Thankfully. And then Maria Cortez, RN, she/they. She writes, and while you can't get gas during a global internet outage, I'll be fueling my car from a wall outlet. Now listen, I'm not so sure that that's anything. The electrical grid could be hacked and attacked just like anything else.
I was going to say, will you read that comment one more time?
Yeah, she said, and while you can't get gas during a global internet outage, I'll be fueling my car from a wall outlet. I mean, look, the electrical grid could be attacked just as easily.
Yeah.
I just don't think that that's a very... And I had this conversation once with Governor Scott. I said, Governor, we continue to have these adverse weather situations where it snows really hard and it's pounded with snow, and all the trees get weighed down and then cover up the electrical lines, and then we're out of electricity, and that continually happens, which it does, by the way. It happens all the time. You're not going to be able to fuel your car. You're going to be stuck. And let's imagine it's a really dire situation and you need to get out of the state. You're totally screwed.
Yeah.
And his reply to me was, well, it takes electricity to run the gas pumps. And I said, well, I'm not somebody who knows much about gas pumps, but I would assume if we needed to access the gasoline, we could access the gasoline. So.
And any smart person that knows that there could be a natural disaster coming is going to go to the gas pump
and get gas
2 weeks in advance and go get 10 gallons of gas.
Yeah, or if you're driving an electric vehicle, you could go to the gas pump for your generator, I guess. Yeah. I mean, it's just at some point you're still relying on...
Well, back to the electric thing is the electric grid's only so big, Vermont's grid is only so big. The country's grid is only so big. There's only so much power out there. It can only handle so much. So what is it going to do? I don't really know, but what is it going to do when everybody and their brother starts plugging in their cars and plugging in their everything?
Yeah.
I honestly think there's not enough power out there for...
No, there's not.
For what the state wants to do. I mean...
Well, there's definitely not enough power for the electric vehicles, and there's definitely not enough renewable power.
Right.
I mean, the state itself, and this is the thing, this is where the numbers... Try to figure this number out. If anyone can figure this out, Vermont brags that all electricity produced in Vermont is renewable energy. It's renewable, and that is true. We don't produce any electricity in the state that's not renewable. However, we still pull on about 2/3 of our electricity from other sources. So Hydro-Quebec up in Canada, and then some power plants down in southern New York, which are not renewable. And
nuclear, right?
I think
down in New York?
I don't want to say, I could be wrong, but I believe it's coal power. So I could be wrong about that, but it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, we love to pat ourselves in the back here and say how great we are, but the reality is we're not producing enough of renewable energy to really do anything. And even if we were, we're not going to stop climate change.
Right.
Oh, well, we got to do our part. At the cost of what?
Right.
At the cost of whom?
Vermonters.
Well, the cost of the poorest people, ultimately. So there's a couple more replies I want to read. Jack Eckhart writes, "You've seen the recent headlines in South Burlington asking people to cut their electricity usage now. I do a lot of work in that area, and they're mandating all electric for heating and hot water, even for warehouses. Heat a warehouse with electricity and let me know when you get the bill." I mean, it's just the reality here, folks. Like, it's just, we're not there yet. And I'm not even saying we shouldn't be or we couldn't be, but we're mandating it because everybody's living in fear and anxiety that we're all going to die because of climate change in 10 years, right? It just, or whatever. I mean, I don't even know what they're saying anymore. I think they just fly by the seat of their pants. They make it up as they go. It's always a moving target at all times. I mean, in 2000 they were saying by the year 2010 the ice caps are going to be melted, and then it's going to flood everywhere, which maybe not wrong. I don't know, but still, it's just not the reality. And this is the last response. Laurel's writes, "Mandates are the problem always and everywhere," and to that I agree. Government mandates I never support. I think they're always wrong. Obviously, there's certain laws that we all can agree upon, right? That are moral laws. Those are mandates. But when we're talking about energy consumption, we're talking about consumers' choices, consumers' views, decisions. Can't mandate things. Or medical choices, by the way, just to throw back to 2020, 2021 vaccines. Mandates are not good, just overall. So that's kind of my take. Caleb, do you have anything you want to add to this?
I really think you hit the nail on the head.
All right, appreciate it, buddy.
Sorry.
I'm just trying, I'm trying to fill the space here. It's not fun. I miss Guy today, man. He's just got to be at the beach, I guess. He's just chilling without us. I hope he's out there viewing. I'm sure he is. So finally, last subject that we wanted to touch on today was the CrowdStrike Microsoft software. There was some sort of cyber problem, and everybody was saying, oh, this is a cyber attack. That's at least what everybody was saying this morning. We suffered some sort of cyber attack. However, that's not the reality, Caleb, from what you understand?
I mean, I've heard both. It started this morning as it was a cyber attack, but as the morning went on, I kind of heard that it was more like Microsoft was trying to update their system, their software, and basically it was too much at once, too fast or whatever, and so the system couldn't handle it, and so the whole Microsoft system crashed, which is a lot more than Microsoft, I mean, like, the hospital was affected. I mean, it wasn't just like computers.
Well, yeah, it's like when I went to UVM, all of UVM software is dependent upon Microsoft's hardware, which is elsewhere, right? It's not based at UVM. They're using cloud software, cloud servers to make this happen. Pretty scary, right? I mean, tell us, what were some of the things that you saw?
I mean, just like, not little things, but like your card swipe badges that let you into doors and stuff. There was a bunch of those that weren't working. All the nurses and doctors were running around crazy because they couldn't use their computers and they didn't know what to do because they haven't touched a piece of pencil and paper in the last 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it's been. And like they couldn't, all the register people couldn't check in patients and register them and look up who they were, or their medical history or anything like that. I mean,
that's pretty scary.
Yeah, I mean, like literally it was, their computers were black.
That's really quite something. I mean, we're talking about people's lives on the line here.
Yeah.
That's.
I don't think it was. That might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but like it was that big of a deal. I mean, they literally couldn't register patients.
I don't know, Caleb, if it's that much of an exaggeration. I mean, let's say this was a sustained outage, right, over a longer period of time, which is totally possible. It kind of goes back to the EV thing, by the way. Like, if there was a serious problem.
Absolutely.
Wow, actually, this is all a really big problem now when you think about it. if it was a longer period of time and somebody shows up and they need medical help for whatever reason, and the doctors are like, well, this is what we usually do, but usually what they do maybe could kill that person, depending on what their medical data would say, right? Pretty scary.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's not to say that that's what happened today. Maybe it did in some places, but I do know Vermont was not the only place affected by this. Here's a photo. This is in Fort Lauderdale. This was sent to me by a friend who's stuck down there, and she was in a little bit of a panic about being stuck down in Florida. And I said, hey, I wish we could trade spots. That's not a bad place to be stuck, you know. And she kind of laughed, but she was very hectic. But this is in the Fort Lauderdale airport, and these are the lines of people. So she couldn't book a ticket. She couldn't check-ins, right? So she was supposed to get on a flight today. They wouldn't let her on because she couldn't check in, and they said, well, you could have checked in yesterday. And she said, well, I was supposed to be on a different flight yesterday, and that would have been way before I would have been able to check in, and then you guys replaced my flight with this flight. And so and they're like, well, it's basically not a problem. And then she couldn't book another flight because all their systems were down, right? So she's just stuck there. And this isn't the only person that I know of that was in a situation like this. And it's just, I'm sorry, man, that's, I guess, the theme of this episode, if you will, is that we have become so dependent upon technology, our amazing creations as humans, right? Like, we've created all these wonderful things, and I'm not saying that they're not great, because, I mean, I'm communicating with you via my cell phone and my laptop and all, you know, these cameras and everything. It's really cool stuff, and I'm thankful. However, I'm not sure that these systems are something that we can really depend on quite yet, and probably never will be able to, actually. I mean, I think that where we're headed as a species, you know, this stuff is always going to be volatile, which really leads me to the final point and final bit that I just want to talk about. This is a tweet from a friend of mine, and he writes, today's cyber events, why I've said for years, including on here, America must develop a backup 1990s infrastructure again. If the digital age and crazy AI future falls apart for whatever reason, we need to be able to rely on a 1990s level civilization again, not the Stone Age. And for whatever reason, right? Could be geoengineered disaster, could be a war, could be a nuclear war, it could be a lot of things. And we've become so dependent upon these systems that, I mean, look, we every time we pay for something, right? You tap your card, you tap it, electromagnetic, whoop, and then you're paid, done, right? Mm-hmm. What if that system breaks down? What if all internet services just gone, or EMP, by the way? You know, and I'm not somebody, and Caleb, we're both not. We don't remember the 1990s. I don't remember it at all. I was born in 99, so
I wasn't even born in the 90s yet.
You weren't there. But, I mean, look, this is serious stuff, and we do need to develop some sort of backup system and always have it, right? So, like even as like if you're a political leader, or you're somebody who's involved in government in any way, shape, or form, there should be like the emergency communication systems is something that we rely on, right? And that's somewhat reliable, and you can use that if there were serious problems, and we still do. But I think there needs to be an entire economics backup system that we can default to, and maybe even celebrate to some degree, where we say, okay, this is great, we have these wonderful communication technologies, banking technologies, softwares, this is all incredible stuff. However, every year we're going to take a few days, the whole country, and we're going to pretend like it's the 1990s.
Yeah.
And
it's like a fire drill.
Like a fire drill.
Had in elementary school.
Dude, that's the perfect way to describe it. It's like a fire drill, and this is just what we do, so that way, if systems do start to fall apart, we're prepared. Because, I'm sorry, I just don't see this type of stuff stopping. This is going to continue and continue and continue. It's actually probably only going to get worse. And I'm not trying to be dramatic here, but, like, I mean, I would say we live currently in a world of, like, an incompetency crisis, where, I mean, we see this all the time, not just with, like, information technologies and computer technologies, but infrastructure. And we're seeing the degradation of infrastructure all over the country. Airplanes, like Boeing's constantly having issues with their airplanes, and you know, we live in a world now where the systems that we've relied on, we can't really rely on as much anymore, because I think we've replaced a lot of those systems with newer, quote-unquote, easier technologies, but they also have problems too. So, what do you have? What do you think?
I don't know. I think it's a very scary subject. I mean,
it is.
We're going to advance this technology until technology starts advancing us.
Well, I think that's where we're at. I mean, how much of our lives right now are being driven by AI?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to a gentleman that I work with, and he was telling me he watched some documentary where it was about AIs and robots, and the robots could upgrade themselves and replace parts, and they were doing flight simulators against a real military pilot, and they were fighting, and the AI would win 10 out of 10 times because he would just do maneuvers that your human brain won't let you do, like head-on fighting and downward fighting and stuff like that, because think about driving a car. You're never going to drive a car straight into somebody. Your brain won't let you, whether if your heart wants to or not. Your brain won't let you. Like they say, you can bite your finger off, but your brain won't let you. Your brain's smarter than you are, really. I mean,
yeah.
And so I think that's where it could potentially come to, where like we almost need to like put some regulations or something on.
I think it just advanced so fast that we're too late. It's too late.
I don't think it's too late. I think if we wanted to, we could do something. We could, the Jeff Bezos or whatever could take the Meta off.
Sure.
Whatever. And I think, I don't think it's too late.
It's not exact. I think you're right. I think that we have a responsibility to start doing something about it. And actually, to bring it back to the RNC last night, Trump was talking about this too. I mean, he sees this as a potential problem, and I think that anyone who's doing anything in government right now, I mean, we've really got to start taking this stuff seriously. AI itself, yes, we can rely on it, we can use it. It can use us.
It's a very awesome piece of technology. What you can do with it, and just
so true.
I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It really is. It blows my mind. I really still don't quite understand it. I can't. I mean, I understand it, but I can't like quite comprehend. Like,
it's too hard to comprehend.
It just blows my mind. It's an amazing piece of technology, but that's the problem, that we don't understand it. I mean, obviously somebody out there.
I don't know if they do. Sometimes.
You know what I mean, though?
I think it's like pure magic in some ways. Like, even sitting here with my, phone, which is controlling the cameras, and my computer, which is streaming. I mean, you could tell me how it all works, and you could explain it to me. But I mean, what we're literally looking at is raw materials that somehow are using electrical signals.
Right.
To do things that I just can't comprehend. I really can't. I touch the camera and I touch the button on my phone and it changes the cameras. It's mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah.
So AI is another level, and the people that do understand it, I think that they almost have this hubris about them, where they think that they can do no wrong, right? Because they're the ones that are in control of it, but they're really not. I don't know. I didn't expect this conversation to evolve into like purely AI, but I think based off of our conversation and everything that we've talked about, it's like this is where everything's going, and we got to be on the forefront of it. The Vermont Daily Chronicle has to be at the forefront of it, and Creemee Cast and everything that we're doing, because this is just the reality in 2024. So I don't know, Caleb. That's all I have. I don't know if you want to say anything to the folks out there.
No, just thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, appreciate it very much, everybody. And once again, no Guy Page this afternoon. He's taking a wonderful snoozy vacation.
I do apologize, everybody. I'm not quite good as Guy.
Well, no,
I tried.
Not yet. We'll get you there. But I appreciate you doing this, Caleb. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, no problem.
It was fun, and I hope that people that are out there viewing, you picked up something. And you learned something, because we're just still trying to figure it out too. So thanks everybody for tuning in. This is